Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea Show here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an honor and a privilege, as it is every day, to have you guys joining me here as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news and all sorts of good things like that. We got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about today. We got stuff about the Hulk going on. Does Mark Ruffalo reveal his role in the movie? We're going to talk a little bit about the controversy surrounding Jessica Jones Season 2, a whole bunch of news items as well. But before we get into all of that stuff, a little interesting piece of information just dropped, and we're going to deal with this off the top. Now, all of us are quite familiar with Shia LaBeouf. I mean, the guy who was introduced to all of us in the Transformers. He's actually turned out to be one hell of an actor. When he's not, taking his crazy pills, he is one hell of an actor. He is a little bit of an odd guy, but one hell of an actor for sure. Well, he just recently did an interview, I believe it was with Esquire, where he basically really trashes the Transformers movies. Now, basically, here's Shia LaBeouf's quote talking about the Transformers. He said this: "My hang up with those films was that they felt irrelevant. They felt dated as fuck. You come up on these stories about Easy Rider and Raging Bull and De Niro and Scorsese and Hopper, and you find value in what they do. Meanwhile, you're chasing energon crystals. It's very hard to keep doing what you're doing when you feel like it's the antithesis of your purpose on this planet." So clearly, Shia doesn't quite like the Transformers. He's not thinking back very fondly on his experience with the Transformers. And look, if you're going to be comparing a big budget popcorn flick like Transformers to Raging Bull or the work of De Niro and Scorsese, yeah, maybe you might come up feeling a little bit jilted. And look, other than the first Transformers, which I like a hell of a lot, I love that first Transformers movie. I'll defend it till the day I die. All the other ones are total crap, in my opinion. To me, they were just absolute waste, and they just seem to get progressively worse and worse and worse and worse. So I get where he's coming from on that. However, I gotta say, here's the thing, Shia. You may want to only do art films now, and I respect that because you are really good at them. But understand this: nobody would know the name Shia LaBeouf if it wasn't for Transformers. You can say you hated the experience, you can say all that kind of stuff, but the fact of the matter is, these art films you get to do now, nobody would put you in them if it wasn't for the Transformers. Nobody would know your name if it wasn't for the Transformers. You would probably be working at Arby's right now. Not that there's anything wrong with working at Arby's, it's a fair job, but that's where you would be right now if it wasn't for the Transformers. You don't have to come out and lie and talk about how great the Transformers is. You don't have to do that. But to take the thing that actually made your career, that gave you your first, platform, that put your name on everybody's lips, to sit there now with it way in your rearview mirror and start talking crap about it now, it just seems a little disingenuous, I guess. Because these films you talk about, those films like Easy Rider and Raging Bull that you want to do, you will never get a chance to do those if it wasn't for the Transformers. So, again, I don't think he should come out and lie and talk about how much he adored the Transformers and how much he loved doing the Transformers and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, dude, you only have a career because of the Transformers. And maybe, just maybe, that's something you should keep in mind before crap talking the Transformers. Anyway, just my thoughts on that. I just thought it was an interesting comment coming out from him, but the dude is ridiculously talented. Like, watch some of his smaller films that he's been doing. He is just outstanding, and I don't even think he's reached his full potential yet, as far as how talented he is, but man, he's got to just take his foot off the gas a little bit in situations like that, I think. All right, guys, listen, before we get into our main topics today that you guys have emailed in to me, if you watch the John Campea Show, I want to make sure you're at least caught up to date with everything major going on in the world of movie news. So we do that in this little segment we call the Movie News Feed. First up, as all of us wait for Game of Thrones to return in 2019 and deal with the depression that it's the final season, we can start to look forward to the multiple spin-offs that are coming. Not only are they coming, but apparently HBO is going to give them the big budgets right off the bat. At the InTV conference in Israel, Francesca Orsi, HBO Senior Vice President of Drama, said that the spin-offs will have budgets that come close to what the current season gets and that they will go over what the media company spent on the earlier seasons of Game of Thrones. She said the following: 50 million per season would never fly for what we are trying to do. We are going big. Well, I guess we're gonna get more dragons. Yay! Next up, you know how Nick Cage was going to play Superman years ago? Well, it looks like he's finally getting his chance, as it's been announced that Cage will voice the Man of Steel in the upcoming animated film Teen Titans Go. As relayed by Nerdist, given the nature of the source material, Cage's Superman won't be the hero as he appears in DC comic books. Instead, this Man of Steel will be filtered through the ridiculous prism of the Teen Titans cartoonish world. But hey, it's Nick Cage, so this should be fun. Next up, according to Variety, the Material Girl is getting behind the camera once again. Madonna will direct the MGM drama Taking Flight, based on the life of ballerina Michaela de Prince. The film will be based on the book Taking Flight, From War Orphan to Star Ballerina. The book follows Michaela's life from an orphan in war-torn Sierra Leone to a world-renowned ballerina. Madonna has previously directed indie films such as Filth and Wisdom and We. Next, get ready to go back to Sunnydale, as it's starting to look like a rebooted Buffy the Vampire Slayer could be closer than we all thought to actually happening. In talking about the possibility of the Slayer returning to TV, Fox's CEO, Gary Newman, said the following: Buffy is probably the most ripe show we have for bringing back. It's something we talk about frequently. Joss Whedon is one of the greatest creators we've ever worked for. When Joss decides it's time, we'll do it. If and how much creator Joss Whedon would actually be involved in any sort of reboot or relaunch of the franchise is kind of up in the air. Whedon recently stepped down from directing a potential Batgirl movie for Warner Brothers, so his schedule may be a little bit more open now. It's hard to think of many other shows that would generate the kind of pure excitement amongst fans that a Buffy return would. And finally, yesterday saw the highly anticipated release of the first trailer for the upcoming Fantastic Beasts sequel, Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. The movie is a follow-up to 2016's $814 million worldwide moneymaker, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which launched what will be a 5-film series of the new adventures from the wizarding world of Harry Potter and author J.K. Rowling. I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan in the world, and while I did enjoy the first Fantastic Beasts, I didn't love it. However, even I was taken by this trailer, and I suddenly find myself, like a lot of other people, really excited for this movie now. Are you? And that'll do it for today's installment of the Movie News Feed. All right, and now you are all caught up with everything going on in the world of movie news, so let's dive into the topics that you guys have sent to me. How do you send in an email or a topic for the John Campea Show? It's simply just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com, put the word topic in the subject line, and keep your emails to 90 words or less. All right, now I'm going to warn you guys here before we get into this first topic. This is stuff that a star of the movie has openly talked about, but some of you might consider it a spoiler, even though it's being talked about openly by one of the stars of the film. It has to do with Avengers Infinity War. It has to do with Mark Ruffalo, who is infamously a little bit loose with his lips, but I'm just giving you fair warning right now, okay? All right, with that out of the way, let's get into the first question. And the first question comes to us from Michael Fitzpatrick. And Michael Fitzpatrick writes, like everyone else on the planet, I'm desperately excited for Avengers Infinity War. I was reading an interview with Mark Ruffalo talking about Banner and Hulk's role in the film. I thought it sounded amazing. Did you read it? What did you think about it? All right, thanks a lot for the question, man. And yeah, so what happens stereotypically with a lot of these big films? There are set visits that happen during the production of the film, and then there's an embargo on releasing those reports and those interviews from set visits until closer to the film's release. Well, a whole bunch of set visit reports got released for Avengers Infinity War, and one of those included an interview with Mark Ruffalo, where he talks about basically where Hulk starts and where Banner and Hulk start and what their role in the film really ends up being. And I think it's rather fascinating. Let's take a look at Mark Ruffalo's comments here. Here's what Ruffalo had to say about the upcoming movie. Banner knows more about Thanos than probably anybody, and he's really trying to impress on everybody how dangerous he is. It's a little bit of a Chicken Little scenario. He comes in screaming bloody murder. He's seen what damage he can cause, talking about Thanos, and how powerful he is, and the entire group is in disarray, so he's also getting caught up on what's happened here, talking about the events of Civil War, and is trying to get them to transcend their differences and impress upon them how much danger they're actually facing. All right. So those are the comments from Mark Ruffalo. And it sounds to me, depending on how you decide to interpret his words, it sounds to me like Banner is actually going to be maybe one of the, if not the key figure in Infinity War. It's almost hard to remember because Civil War was a couple of years ago, that when Banner comes back to Earth, he has no idea about the events of Civil War. He has no idea that Tony and Cap aren't on speaking terms and they're separated by the entire world and all this kind of stuff. So he sees what's going on. Now, this is just me theorizing now, but him saying he ends up back on Earth. The last time we see Hulk, he's on that ship with Thor and Loki. Obviously, something horrible happens. In the post-credit scene, we see Thanos' ship intercept Thor's ship. Thor, we know from the trailers, ends up floating practically dead in space. Banner ends up crashing back down to Earth and needs to run around and tell everybody how dangerous he is. So it sounds to me like this movie is going to open with a huge epic battle. This is just me speculating. Huge epic battle where Thor gets his ass kicked, Hulk gets his ass kicked, and maybe Loki dies. We've been talking about that for a couple of days, that maybe that happens. And now Banner finds himself in the role of having to get everybody together to be like, guys, we're in trouble. And there's something I point out a little bit earlier, or in an earlier show, is that in the trailers, if you really look at it, Banner/Hulk is the only guy in the trailers who is both in New York and in Wakanda. We see him in both. None of the other characters do we see in New York and in Wakanda. So I think that's kind of interesting. But anyway, I wanted to get some more insight rather than just my own about this whole interview with Mark Ruffalo. So I got a hold of our good friend, Miss Melendez, to get on the line and talk to us about her thoughts about Mark Ruffalo's comments. Here, check this out. Okay, Migdalia, you read Ruffalo's comments. Now, the first thing that I got to ask is, are you surprised that Ruffalo revealed so much in this statement, or do you even think he revealed all that much and maybe it just looks on its surface like he revealed a lot? How do you see it?
You know what, John? I know that Mark Ruffalo has a reputation for leaking things on set, like Tom Holland does, whether they do pictures or Instagram stories that reveal certain plot points of characters. But I actually think he really tamed himself and said nothing at all, because I read the whole interview and he was kind of talking himself in a circle or referencing things that we've already speculated or already know. We already know Thanos' ship is in the beginning of the film and that they're going to have a confrontation.
Now, okay, so it seems like from Ruffalo's comments that one of the big things he sees his character's mission as doing is, first of all, dealing with the fallout of Civil War and what happened in Civil War. And it seems like his big mission, according to these statements, is to try to get the two sides, you know, the Captain side, the Iron Man side, and get them back together. Do you think that's something that he'll accomplish in Infinity War, or is that something we're not going to see him accomplish until, say, Avengers 4, or are we going to see him accomplish it at all?
I mean, that's going to take too long. So I think we're going to get a major death at the beginning of Infinity War, right? And everyone's speculating that to be Loki. So I think then Bruce goes back down to Earth, tries to get, you know, Iron Man and Captain America back together. He's going to spend the entire film doing that. He's basically going to be our Nick Fury of the film, I think. And then there's going to be a major death at the end, whether that's going to be Iron Man or Captain America. I think it's going to be one of those two that will finally bring everyone back together to face Thanos for Avengers 4.
Well, since Samuel Jackson's not in the film, apparently you need somebody playing the role of Nick Fury at this point. Okay, so in the trailers, and I don't know if this has anything to do with the statements or not, but in the trailers, it struck me that the Hulk/Bruce Banner is the only character in the trailer who we see in New York with Tony and in Wakanda as the Hulk running into battle in Wakanda. Do you think there's any significance to that? And if so, what do you think it is?
I mean, again, like I mentioned before, I think he's going to be our Nick Fury of the film, trying to bring the two sides together. We do see other characters in Wakanda. So, like, we see Black Widow and Captain America, and I think there was somebody else in there.
War Machine. We see War Machine in there.
Yeah, so there's quite a few people. And there are people from both sides, too. And I think we heard last time the majority of Act 3 is going to be in Wakanda. So I am very curious as to how everybody gets there and why. Probably one of the gemstones. But I don't think there's anything more significant than that.
All right, Migdalia. Well, listen, thanks a lot for sharing your insight. Tell people where they can find you online if they want to find you on Twitter.
Guys, as usual, you can find me on Twitter at Miggy Spicy. That's MIGGY SPICY. It's good to see you guys again.
All right. Thanks a lot, Migdalia.
Thanks, John.
All right. Special thanks to Migdalia for joining us again here to talk about this stuff. But listen, I want to know, what do you make of Mark Ruffalo's comments? Jump down into the comments section and let us know, how do you interpret them? Do you think he's just given away some major stuff? Do you really think it isn't that big of a deal that he just shared? Jump down there and leave everybody your thoughts. All right, let's move on now to the next topic. And the next topic today comes to us from Mike Ryan. And Mike Ryan writes, why do high-caliber actors take minuscule roles in movies? Seeing Jon Bernthal, one of my favorite actors, play such a small part in Wind River and Baby Driver was surprising. I think he deserves better, and it made me wonder, do actors take these jobs for the paycheck/exposure, or is it beyond that? All right, thanks a lot for the question, Mike. And here's the thing, I think average film fans like myself and you, all things we have to keep into consideration here is that for every one Jon Bernthal, there are about 5,000 other actors who would love to have that role. There are about 5,000, 10,000, 50,000 other actors not getting those roles that he's getting. Jon Bernthal is a very good actor. Absolutely he is. But he is getting more work than 99.9999999% of actors just in Los Angeles alone. Like every coffee shop, every restaurant, every bookstore you go into, they're all staffed by actors just doing their day jobs to pay their bills while they're trying to get these roles, right? Jon Bernthal is a very gifted actor, and that's why he's getting roles. And he's getting roles in good films, like Wind River, like Baby Driver. He's got a role coming up in Widows. Again, not a lead role, but that movie looks really, really good. He's got a role coming up in that Damien Chazelle, Ryan Gosling movie, First Man. He's not one of the leads, but he's got a role in a great movie. He's a really good actor, which is why he gets those roles. Part of the problem is that just because he's talented, like for instance, I always constantly talk about, I think one of the most underrated actors in the world is a character actor by the name of David Morse. He's a great character actor, but the Hollywood studios just don't see him as a leading guy per se. And I think for whatever reason, rightly or wrongly, I think a lot of the studios and a lot of the casting people look at Jon Bernthal as a really solid supporting cast member for some stuff, but not necessarily a lead guy. Not that he doesn't have the talent for it, but there's the other qualities that they think maybe he doesn't have. I don't know. I can't justify it. But, talking about, oh man, why does Jon Bernthal take such tiny roles? Are you kidding me? You know how many other actors wanted those roles in Wind River? You know how many other actors wanted that role in Baby Driver? Or in First Man? Or in Widows? Or any of the other films that Jon Bernthal has coming up? That's why, look, Jon Bernthal is not an A-list star. I'm not saying he couldn't be one. I'm not saying he doesn't have the talent level of one, but the fact of the matter is, Jon Bernthal is not an A-list star at this point in time. So I don't think it's a question about why doesn't he get A-list star roles. He's getting a lot of work. He's making a lot of money. But you asked something interesting there. You asked, do these guys just take these jobs for the paycheck? They all take the job for the paycheck. It's their job. You get up in the morning and go to work, not because you want to, but for the paycheck. Everybody goes to work for the paycheck. They're doing it to make a living. So absolutely Jon Bernthal does it for a paycheck, and that's not a bad thing at all. And he's having incredible success. Let's not downplay how much success Jon Bernthal is having right now. The fact that he's getting into all these high-profile, awards buzz kind of films is incredibly successful. So let's not downplay how hot of a streak Jon Bernthal is on right now. And maybe it'll lead to bigger things. Maybe he'll stay in this zone, whatever, and have an incredibly lucrative career. Either way, Jon Bernthal wins. So let's not downplay his accomplishments at this point. All right, let's move on now to the final emailed in topic of the day, and then we're going to go over to some of your guys' live questions. And the last emailed in topic today comes to us from Gary Richardson, who writes, I just found out that Netflix and the showrunners of season 2 of Jessica Jones decided to only hire female directors, no men allowed. Isn't that illegal somehow? To state an entire gender will not be considered for work. But more importantly, why hasn't this made more of a splash with SJ. Oh, I hate Gary, just for future reference, don't be one of these losers who uses the SJW tag. That just makes you look ignorant. Anyway, splash with SJWs and the media. If the showrunners of Luke Cage suddenly decided to only hire male directors, you can imagine the backlash that would cause, right? What are your thoughts on this? Well, here's the thing, Gary. I find it very interesting that you bring up Luke Cage. If Luke Cage decided to only hire male directors, which they would never do. Luke Cage would never do that. If the showrunners of Luke Cage decided to only hire male directors, can you imagine the outrage? Well, it's funny you should say that. Here's the only season of Luke Cage we've had so far, Luke Cage Season 1. They had 13 episodes, and it was all directed by Paul McGinn, Guillermo Navarro, Vincenzo Natali, Mark Jobst, Sam Miller, Andy Goddard, Magnus Martins, Tom, Stephen, George, Phil, and Clark. Can you imagine if Luke Cage only hired male directors? Well, funny you should say that. They did. Okay, well, how about the show that came out before? What about Daredevil? I mean, Daredevil wouldn't have just excluded women and only hired male directors. Oh, wait. They did. Let's look down this list. Let's see. It's directed by Phil again, Adam, Ken, Farron, and yes, Farron is a dude, Guy, Brad, Steven, Nelson, Farron, Nick, Euros, and yes, Euros is a guy, and Stephen S. DeKnight. Can you imagine what would happen if Daredevil only hired male directors? So here we've got Luke Cage Season 1, 13 episodes, 13. None of them didn't decide to give a single one of those director's jobs to a woman. Daredevil Season 1, 13 episodes. That's 26 episodes between Luke Cage and Daredevil. Well, how many of those jobs did they give to women? Oh, none. None. Iron Fist, in its 13 episodes, let women directors direct 2 of the 13 episodes. Punisher let 2 episodes be directed by women. That means, out of those 4 shows, out of 52 episodes, 4 episodes, they let women direct. Luke Cage, not a single woman hired. Daredevil Season 1, not a single woman hired. Less than, probably about 8%. 8% of those shows' episodes, they let women direct. 8%. Now, let's look at Jessica Jones Season 1. Jessica Jones Season 1 pretty much had an even split of female and male directors, right? So pretty much an even split of female and male directors. And now, I don't like the first season of Jessica Jones. I don't hate it, but I didn't like it. But a hell of a lot of people, and this is important, take note of this. There's a hell of a lot of people out there who think that Jessica Jones Season 1 is the best season of the Netflix Marvel shows ever. I mean, I don't like it, but there's a hell of a lot of people out there who think Jessica Jones Season 1 was the best season of Netflix television, Netflix Marvel television. And half of those episodes were directed by women. So now we go into Jessica Jones Season 2. Now, why did they only hire women for Jessica Jones Season 2? Well, the showrunner explained how that all came about. Here's the interview with the showrunner. She said this: "It really just began organically. I started the season knowing that I wanted at least half of the directors to be women and or people of color. I mean, why not? They did Season 1 splitting between male and female directors, and they had incredible success with that." So anyway, she goes, "I know I wanted to have at least half of the directors be women and or people of color. As we went along, we realized that there's a very deep bench of very talented, very experienced pros," talking about the female directors. Then she goes on to say, "It was my colleagues at Netflix who said, well then, just do all 13. It was born out of just looking around and seeing who was out there. We've got a really talented lineup. No one was giving anyone any breaks." So what the showrunner of Jessica Jones was basically saying is, well, I mean, I was going to hire at least half men, but then I'm looking at all these female directors who are so gifted and so talented. It's a shame I can only hire half of them. And then Netflix said to them, well, what? Just go do all 13. Make a novelty out of it. Do all 13. Now, even by doing that, if you just take the Jessica Jones, follow me here, This is important math. I know people hear numbers and they just kind of tune out, but these are important numbers. If you take Jessica Jones season 1 and season 2, right? About 25% of the episodes were directed by men. About 25%. Take all the other shows, and only about 8% of them are directed by women. About 8. Now, here's the question I have, and this is an important question that you cannot get around. If the showrunners of Jessica Jones, look around and find this incredible wealth of what they call this incredible deep wealth of directing talent that happen to be women directors, if they can look and find this incredibly rich, deep bench of female directors that they used half of them for on Jessica Jones season 1 that ended up being a rave hit with everybody, well then how come Luke Cage season 1 couldn't find a single one? How come Daredevil season 1 couldn't find a single female director? Why not? If the Jessica Jones showrunners look and find all this wealth of talent that they're talking about, and they use half of them on season 1 of Jessica Jones, which ends up being one of the most highly critically praised seasons of any of them, how come Luke Cage couldn't find any? How come Daredevil couldn't find any? How come out of the 26 combined episodes between Iron Fist and Punisher, they could only allow 4 of them to be directed by women? If there's all this huge, deep wealth of talent, why couldn't they find them? You know, I find it kind of funny, though, that, you know, we talk about Jessica Jones only hired female directors. I mean, can you imagine if Luke Cage did that? Luke Cage did do that. Daredevil did do that. And don't say, you can't pretend, you can't hide behind this park bench anymore of saying, well, that's just because they were all the best directors for the job. Really? Then how come Jessica Jones found all these great directors and made Jessica Jones season 1 with a bunch of them? And it's one of the most highly critically praised of all the Netflix shows. How come Luke Cage couldn't find a single one? Why didn't Daredevil find a single one if they were all there? So let's not pretend here that there's a double standard going the other way. All right? Even with Jessica Jones hiring all female directors for season 2 of their show, you're still talking about maybe 12% of the overall episodes of Netflix Marvel television have actually been directed by women. Don't tell me that they haven't been excluding women from the director's chairs when there's this apparent huge wealth of directors available to them, and none of them were allowed to direct Luke Cage. None of them were allowed to direct Daredevil. Only 2 of them were allowed to direct the 13 episodes of Punisher. Only 2 of them were allowed to direct 13 episodes of Iron Fist. Don't tell me they haven't been excluding women. Don't tell me, oh, we just couldn't find anybody talented enough. Funny, Jessica Jones was able to find them. They had no problem. And they were hugely critically praised. Gosh, maybe you should check your eyesight. Maybe the reason you couldn't find any of these so-called talented female directors, maybe it's because you had bad eyesight. I just find it a little bit odd now that after several Netflix Marvel shows exclusively hire one gender, that when one exclusively hires the other gender, now we have a problem. Now there's a problem. And I just find it a little bit disingenuous. And quite frankly, I think it points out an agenda. I really do. I really think it points out an agenda. And look, and again, the numbers, we want to tune out with the numbers. But even with Jessica Jones hiring all female directors for season 2, the proportion of male directors to female directors in the Netflix Marvel shows is way out of proportion, heavily towards male directors. And again, a lot of people have always liked to use this, hide behind this excuse of, oh, maybe just the best person for the job every time was a man. Really? Because Jessica Jones found all these great directors and ended up being critically praised. Really, not a single female director was good enough for Luke Cage season 1? Not a single female director was good enough for Daredevil season 1? Oh, but Jessica Jones does a season with all female directors, and it's a big deal all of a sudden. I just think we got to be aware of the bigger picture. Like when we're tackling something, and I get the question, I do, I understand the question. I just think when we're trying to delve into stuff like this one issue with the Jessica Jones thing, we need to take a step back and take the Jessica Jones season 2 situation into consideration with the bigger picture. Well, let's not just look at Jessica Jones. Let's look at the entire Netflix Marvel universe so far. And suddenly it starts putting it in perspective. And without perspective, then we're just chasing our tails a little bit. Anyway, that's just my thoughts on that whole thing. All right, guys, with that out of the way, I said we would get to some of your live questions. We've only got a few minutes left here, but don't worry, guys. If you've sent in a live question and I don't have time to get around to it, don't worry about it. I'm going to put out a supplemental video a little bit later today, and I will answer every single one of the live questions that you guys have sent in. All right, let's get rolling on this, and we'll try to move pretty quickly through them. First off, Sam Fisher writes, remember to look up at the stars and not down at your feet. R.I.P. Stephen. Oh, yeah, it was really shocking to hear about the passing of Stephen Hawking's, not just influence on the world of science and the world at large, but also huge influence in the world of movies. We've seen him referenced and used in biographies all about him. Definitely, dude will be missed. Guzz Off My Daddy writes, John, what's your secret DC news? Nope, sorry, not even going to take the question. Amin writes, better and or your favorite film, Thor 3 or Guardians 1? Ooh, I'm going to go Guardians 1. I really love Thor 3, but there was something really special about Guardians 1. I'm going to go with Guardians 1, although totally not a wrong answer to say Thor 3 there. Manuel Fernandez writes, in just a month, we lost both Billy Graham and Stephen Hawking, both titans in their field. They were total opposites, but both brought hope to humanity through their own means. Graham with God, Hawking with science. You know, it's funny, they met once. And they both spoke highly of each other, and which is really, really cool to see, because you'd think no two people could be more polar opposites, and yet apparently they had a great deal of respect for each other. Matthew Carrera writes, have you heard of the miniseries called The Alienist with Daniel Bruhl and Luke Evans? Been hearing good things. Yes, and I've been meaning to watch it, because I'm a big Luke Evans fan, and obviously everybody's a big Daniel Bruhl fan too. The guy's crazy talented. I've also heard really, really good things about it. So I haven't had a chance to watch it myself yet, but that is a good one to put on everybody's list. Everybody, The Alienist, check it out. I'm hearing amazing things about it. Dark Knight 46K writes, more hype going into a movie, Force Awakens or Infinity War. By the way, becoming a Patreon supporter today, thanks for all you do. Well, thank you so much, Dark Knight 46. I'm going to say The Force Awakens because, but The Force Awakens had an unfair advantage over Infinity War. We're getting 3 like Marvel films a year. And while we were all certainly hyped, me especially, for Infinity War, there was about The Force Awakens, it was the return of Star Wars. We hadn't had Star Wars movies in theaters forever. It was the return. So I think there was more hype about The Force Awakens. Let's see. Next one comes to us from KW Garrett, who writes, is it even possible for Hulk to die? Thor hints Banner's alter ego could disappear, so I don't mean Bruce. Any precedent for Hulk dying in comics? As a matter of fact, in the comics, yes, he's died a number of times in comics. He died in Old Man Logan. He died in Civil War II. He died in Deadpool Kills the MC, or the Deadpool Kills Marvel. I know some of these are Elseworld things, obviously. He died in... he died in World War Hulk. I believe he dies at the end. He's died a whole bunch of times. There's a whole bunch of storylines where Hulk dies. Now, in the movies, I don't know, because Bruce talks about how he put a gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger and must have instantly turned into the Hulk, and the other guy spit it out. So I don't know if in the movies they're saying he can die, but in the comics there are certainly precedents of him dying. Victor Barreras writes, Patreon supporter here. Thank you so much, Victor, for being a Patreon supporter. Here and proud of it. Would you be opposed to a new version of Ghost Rider, possibly in the MCU? Thoughts on the old films? Well, here's the problem with that. Ghost Rider is technically in the MCU. They used him in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And since they are supposed to somewhat be connected to each other, they would have to retcon it badly. And I don't know that they're going to do that. So if they're going to do Ghost Rider, they have to do the Ghost Rider they've already been using in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Or they have to say that he was the Ghost Rider and now there's a new one for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't know that Ghost Rider fits into a cinematic universe. I'd be all for a standalone Ghost Rider movie. I'm just not quite sure how a character like Ghost Rider actually fits into a cinematic universe. But hey, that's just me and my things. But I would certainly be open to a new movie version of him. Let's see. Okay, a whole lot of more questions came in. Where are we here? Okay, here we go. Dakota Barber writes, I found the article with Hulk's role to be pretty cool. Yeah, it was a very cool article. If you're just joining us, not sure what we're talking about, it's one of the earlier topics we discussed here today. Just shoot on back in the video and check it out. But it was, Dakota, it was a very cool article. Next one, Jazanthan writes, My theory for not having Ant-Man in Infinity War. What if Ant-Man and the Wasp set between Civil War and Infinity War, and at the end, Ant-Man gets lost in Quantum Realm? We won't know what happened to him till Avengers 4. It's possible. However, earlier covers of Avengers Infinity War in the various magazines did have Ant-Man and did have the Wasp. Therefore, I gotta believe, even though we haven't seen them in trailers or anything, Ant-Man and the Wasp are going to show up in this movie. I could be wrong. It's possible that they don't, but I really do believe they will. So I'm not really sure what happens. It is interesting, though, that the two movies that come after Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, happens before the events of Infinity War. And then Captain Marvel happens long before the events of Infinity War. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. But I don't think they just disappear before the events of Infinity War because, again, they're in some of the promotional covers. Therefore, I think they will be in the movie. But who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Your theory could totally be accurate. Just I always mispronounce your name. Jazanthan. So your theory may be totally right. Alexander Helmer writes, favorite Office side character. I love Kevin and Toby. It's funny, I did an Ask Me Anything for our Patreon supporters yesterday, and somebody asked me that exact question. Well, not exactly, but basically, who's my favorite character besides Michael and Jim? And my actual favorite side character is Creed. Creed, who was used so little, but I think that just made him more effective. One of my favorite lines ever in the Office is, I got you. Who's your worm guy? One of my favorite lines in The Office of all time. Creed. I would watch a Creed spin-off show, man. All right, next up. Alexander Helmer writes again, binge The Office. I'm in love with it. Feels like I have a connection with each character. Even, there you go, you're mentioning Creed. Even Creed. And each episode is too funny. Your thoughts? Look, The Office, there's an argument to be made that The Office may be the greatest sitcom of all time. You're going to be talking about things like I Love Lucy, you're talking about Seinfeld, you're talking about The Office. I think it's got to be considered up there in the conversation with greatest sitcoms of all time. I can sit down, turn on Hulu, put on any episode of The Office, sit back, and I know I'm going to laugh my ass off. That and Parks and Rec are kind of the same thing for that. But yeah, I absolutely love that show, man. Nathan C. writes, okay, Star Wars producer, which do you commission? Aaron Sorkin's political drama with Trade Federation, Senate, Young Palpatine, or Martin McDonagh's black comedy of two exiled Gungans assassinating Jar Jar? Okay. Only because I know how good, after watching The West Wing, how good Aaron Sorkin can make political stuff seem fun and interesting and engaging. I'll go with the Aaron Sorkin one. But I gotta admit, I'd be curious to see that McDonagh one too. That one could be really interesting. Man, Nathan, where did your imagination come up with this stuff, man? That's some pretty creative stuff. All right. Stephen Mizell writes, best female performance in a comic book movie. Oh, that's a great question. Best female performance in a comic book movie. Whew. Man, I don't know. I'd have to sit down. I mean, look, you probably would have to start with Black Widow. You probably have to start with her. And because she's, especially in Winter Soldier, her performance, Scarlett Johansson's performance in Winter Soldier was fantastic. Like really, really fantastic. So I would have to think about it more, and maybe I would change my mind later. But for now, I'll go with Scarlett Johansson. It's a very good question, though. Let's see. Next one comes to us from Purple 100, who writes, hey, John, been watching for a while, enjoying your shows, and even when I don't agree with you. Hey, that's the thing. The point is not to agree with me. That's not the point. So I'm glad that you understand that. That's great. You shouldn't agree with me because I'm not right 100% of the time. You should absolutely disagree with me. Over under 15% that we don't see the Soul Stone in either Avengers 3 or 4? I'll take the under. I think it's possible, but we're talking about an over-under number of like 2%. If you're going to set the number at 15%, I got to take the under on that one, man. I think it will show up. I think the better question, over under 15%, whether it shows up in Avengers 3. Then 15-20% becomes a good line. But if you're going to set 15% for either of the two upcoming Avengers films, I think I'm going to take the under on that. Warren Lucas writes, better popcorn delivery container, tub or bag? Oddly enough, you might be surprised. I'm going to say bag. I'm going to say bag, just because with the bag, you got some flexibility there, right? Like when I want to shake up the popcorn and get the butter, because everybody knows popcorn is nothing but a butter delivery device, and I want to get that butter distributed more evenly, being able to ply the bag much more easily makes life a little bit easier. So while a lot of people love the tub, now I'm not talking about the collectible tubs, like you go to a Star Wars premiere and they have this big plastic collectible tub with Star Wars artwork. That's different, but a regular tub versus regular bag, I'm actually going to go bag. And I've created a controversy now across the internet. All right. Next one comes to us from Kalis Menon, who writes, what happened to Mike Myers? Good Canadian kid. I think what happened with Mike was that he did that movie, The Love Guru, and it bit him in the ass. I think it hurt him personally, deeply, the response. And it was a bad movie. Let's call it what it is. It was a bad film. And I think it just made him recoil. And he's done some directing. He's directed a couple documentaries. I would love to see Mike Myers return, man. I just would. The world of entertainment would be better if he came back. Tony Lamar writes, trivia. In the movie War Games, can you name the arcade where David was playing Galaga? Oh, that's a good one. Whoo, that's a terrific trivia question. Quick, who can answer that in the chat board? I'll be honest with you, I can't even... Nope. You got me. That's a great trivia question, Lamar. Everybody in the chat board, see if you can find the answer. Fire out the answer in the chat board. That's a great question. Hudson Smith writes, Zac Efron is an underrated actor in my opinion. Well, you and me both, man. I think Zac Efron is a terrific talent. Not always picking the right movies to be in, but I think where he's going to really reintroduce himself to the world with his acting with this Ted Bundy movie he's got coming out. I believe they've wrapped production on it now. So I can't remember the release date if it's later this year or early in 2019. But I think a lot of people are going to sit up and pay attention. And if you have not seen his movie, Me and Orson Welles, you want to see how good of an actor he can really be, check out that film he did. I believe he did it with Claire Danes called Me and Orson Welles. It's fantastic. All right, just time for like two more here. Oh boy, John Gigonclaves writes, am I the only one who thinks when Kilgrave is not in love with Jessica Jones, he is one of the best TV villains ever? P.S. Kristen Ritter impressed me. Well, like I was talking about earlier, a lot of people find that first season of Jessica Jones, and Kilgrave is no small part of this, consider it to be maybe the best season of Netflix Marvel stuff they've ever done. I'm not one of those people. Didn't quite work for me, but Kilgrave was a terrific villain. Like an absolutely terrific villain. And I think even when he was in love with Jessica Jones, he was a terrific villain. I really, really do. And I think you're going to find a lot of people agree with you on that. All right. Just a couple more quick ones here. Junk Muffin writes, hey, John, you are so awesome. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. I love your content and look up to you greatly. Have you seen the new J.K. Simmons show, Counterpart? It's very good. No, and here's part of the problem. I can't even remember which network it's on. Is it a Starz one? Is it Starz? Anyway, it's on a streaming network I don't have currently. And I'm just like, I've got to draw a line somewhere. I cannot pay for every single streaming service. So I have not had a chance to watch it yet, but believe me, I'm dying to see it. Once it becomes available for, like season 1 becomes available for purchase and all that kind of stuff, I will check it out. If some of you know if there's another service that I can just watch it, let me know. I would love to know about it. But no, I haven't had a chance to check it out yet. All right, 2 more questions, then we're going to call it a day. And again, guys, don't worry if I didn't get around to your question. I will answer it in a later video today. Eric DeRigi writes, did you notice in the screenshot I sent you of the Cyclops visor in Black Panther? I don't remember the screenshot, Eric. The scene where Sherry had Black Panther kick the suit. I think you meant Shuri. Kick the black suit and go flying back. Good Easter egg or just, you know what? I did not see the picture, so I don't know where you sent it to, but I have not seen that picture, the one you're talking about. So until I see the picture, I can't really comment on it. Pablo Diablo writes, hey, John, been a fan since the Man of Steel review. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Which would translate better to film? Uncharted or The Last of Us? Thanks for being a positive role model for the film fan community. I think they would both have the potential to be terrific films. I think The Last of Us, which is a little bit more character driven, I think Last of Us would translate a little bit better, but I also believe Uncharted could translate great. I really do. But I think Last of Us would probably translate a little bit better. All right, guys, that will do it for this installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you guys so much for being here. Listen, don't forget, jump down to the comment section, leave your thought on any or all the topics we discussed here today. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Just jump on Twitter and follow me simply at John Campea. Listen, guys, This whole channel is only made possible because of my Patreon supporters. Do me a favor, if you enjoy watching my shows, head on over to patreon.com/John Campea. Get all the information about what it means to be a Patreon supporter, how being a Patreon supporter keeps this channel alive, and also what benefits there are to being a Patreon supporter as well. All right, guys, that will do it for me. My name's John Campea. Thanks very much for joining me, and until my next video, bye-bye.